I was on my way to dialysis when I found out my bank account had been emptied. 3 cents. That's all I had left after a lifetime of sacrifice, raising my son alone, working double shifts, and draining my savings to set him up for success. So I called him. Jerry, my only son. I thought maybe it was a mistake. But what I heard instead wasn't confusion or concern. It was laughter. Then a voice in the background. His fiancée's, cold as ice. Let him die. He's a dead man walking. That's when I decided to show them what a dead man walking really looks like. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. The machine beeped. One sharp sound that cut through the morning silence and sank straight into my chest like a blade. I remember standing there, my fingers still hovering over the keypad, the glow of the ATM screen reflecting off my glasses. 3 cents. That's what it said. Not $30. Not even 3. 3 cents. That balance mocked me like a cruel joke. A final punchline to a life I thought I'd lived with at least some dignity. For a moment, I just stood there, blinking at it. Maybe I typed something wrong. Maybe it glitched. Maybe I'd accidentally checked someone else's account. But no, my name was there in the corner. My account. My nothing. I staggered back from the machine, my heart pounding not from fear, but from something uglier. A deep, hollow ache in my chest that made me question everything. I was supposed to head to dialysis. I always stopped at this ATM first to pull a bit of cash for snacks, maybe a sandwich afterward. Just a small thing to make the day feel a little less mechanical. But now, I didn't even have enough to buy a bus fare back home, let alone a meal. My first instinct wasn't anger. It wasn't even confusion. It was shame. That quiet, sticky shame that wraps around your ribs and whispers, "You should have seen this coming." I leaned against the wall outside the bank, the autumn wind nipping at my jacket, and I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I called Jerry, my son, my only son, the boy I raised after his mother died, who I held through fevers and heartbreaks, who I helped get through college and co-signed loans for. Jerry, who had a good job now, a fiancé, a house in the suburbs. Jerry, who had promised he'd look out for me when things got tough. I didn't expect handouts, but I sure as hell didn't expect what came next. The phone rang twice. "Hey, Pops," he answered, casual, like we were just catching up. "Jerry, my account. There's nothing in it. 3 cents. Did something happen?" There was a pause. And then, a sound I'll never forget. He smirked. I could hear it in his voice. That little curl of sarcasm wrapped in a laugh. "How much is left in your account?" he repeated, like it was a joke. 3 cents, I whispered, still staring at the machine. Then I heard her, his fiancée, Tanya, in the background, like she wasn't even trying to whisper, like she wanted me to hear. "Let him die," she said. "He's a dead man walking." My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the phone tighter and slid down onto the cold concrete. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so sharp, so cold, it sucked the air right out of my lungs. Jerry didn't say anything. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her to shut her mouth. All I heard was a quiet chuckle, like he thought it was funny. So I hung up. And in that moment, something in me shifted. A cold, quiet resolve settled in my bones. I'd been called a lot of things in my life. Poor, tired, sick. But never helpless. Never irrelevant. If they thought I was a dead man walking, I'd show them exactly what that looked like. Not with fists or threats, but with something stronger. With truth. I stood back up. My knees screamed in protest, but I didn't care. I walked away from that ATM, not like a man defeated, but like a man with a mission. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this much. I was done being quiet. I was done being used. And Jerry? He was about to learn what happens when the man he buried alive comes back knocking. Because even a dead man has a voice. And I was ready to use mine. It's a strange thing, how memory works. One moment you're in the present, staring down the barrel of your own son's betrayal. And the next, you're standing in a hospital room 19 years ago, holding a squirming newborn in your arms while the nurses wheel his mother away, pale and silent. She never came back. That was the first time I truly understood what loss felt like. That gut punch absence. That silence that hums in your ears like feedback. I named him Jerry because it was her father's name, and I thought honoring her would keep some part of her with us. It didn't, but it made me fight harder for him. Raising Jerry alone wasn't easy. I worked nights at the plant and days at the auto shop. I learned to braid his hair when he was little, pack school lunches, sew his jeans when they split at the knees. I gave him everything I could, and when that wasn't enough, I gave him things I couldn't afford. When he got accepted into college, I cried. Not because I was proud, though I was, but because I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. But I did. I took out loans, skipped meals, worked weekends. And when he called to say he needed help with the down payment on his house years later, I emptied my savings without a second thought. That's what fathers do, right? Except somewhere along the way, I stopped being his father. I became a wallet, a pit stop for money, a name he mumbled with obligation. After the call outside the ATM, I barely remember getting to dialysis. The nurse, Lorna, noticed I was quieter than usual. "You okay, Mr. Turner?" she asked, her voice soft. I just nodded. Rough morning. An older man a few chairs down, Morris, leaned over and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed. "Worse," I said. "I've seen my son for what he really is." Morris didn't pry. He just nodded like he knew the feeling. And maybe he did. There's something about being strapped to a machine 3 times a week that makes you see things clearer. Time, betrayal, love, they all feel sharper when your hours are numbered. When I told him what happened, not the whole thing, just enough, he sat back, whistled low. That boy needs a lesson in decency. He needs more than that. I muttered. Morris looked me square in the eye. Then give it to him. Ain't no shame in drawing a line, even if it's blood you're cutting off. That sat with me. Long after the machines beeped their goodbyes and I shuffled out into the evening air, those words stayed. Maybe I had let things slide for too long. Maybe the reason Jerry treated me like this wasn't just Tanya's influence, but my own silence. My own inability to say no. When I got home, I went straight to my filing cabinet. I pulled out bank statements, receipts, wire transfers, every record of every dime I'd sent Jerry. There was more than I remembered. Rent money, tuition deposits, bailout after he crashed that BMW. I even found an old email from him saying, "Don't worry, Pops. I'll pay you back with interest." That was from 2016. I sat there in the dark, the papers spread out like crime scene evidence, and I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Anger. Real, unfiltered anger. Not sadness. Not disappointment. But fury. And it felt good. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. I didn't even knock the first time. I just walked up the clean, bricked path of Jerry's suburban home, the one I helped pay for, and rang the damn bell. Twice. My heart thudded like a jackhammer, and the whole time, I kept replaying Tanya's voice in my head. Let him die. I could still hear the cruelty in it. So casual, so certain. And Jerry's silence. That's what burned the most. Not what she said, but what he didn't. The door swung open, and there she was. Tanya. Face full of makeup, nails sharp as daggers, expression smug enough to knock a man out cold. "Well, look who it is," she said. "The walking corpse." I took a deep breath. "Is Jerry home?" She leaned against the doorframe, unfazed. "What do you want, old man? More money? Didn't you drain your own account already?" Before I could respond, Jerry appeared behind her, dressed in weekend casual, sweatpants, a hoodie, coffee mug in hand. He looked more annoyed than surprised. "Dad, you can't just show up like this," he said, stepping past her. "I can and I did," I said. "We need to talk. Now." Tanya rolled her eyes and walked back inside, muttering, "You better handle your zombie." Jerry closed the door behind him and stood with his arms crossed. "What do you want?" "I want to know why you took everything I had. Why you emptied my account." His mouth twisted. "You gave it to me. You said it was fine. Don't rewrite history." "I didn't give you permission to drain my savings behind my back," I snapped. "And I sure as hell didn't give you permission to laugh while your fiancé wishes me dead." That hit. For a moment, his mask slipped. Then it snapped right back into place. "You always act like you're the victim. You gave me everything because you wanted to. Now that it's inconvenient, suddenly I'm the villain?" "You are the villain," I said, voice rising. "You stole from me. You lied. You let that woman disrespect me. And you did nothing. Keep your voice down, he hissed. My neighbors don't need to hear this. Let them hear, I shouted. Let them know their friendly neighbor treats his dying father like garbage. The door cracked open, Tanya peeking out. Y'all done embarrassing yourselves yet? I turned to Jerry. I came here to give you a chance. To own up. To say sorry. But you can't even do that. You're too far gone. He didn't respond. Just looked away. I stepped back, slow and steady. You call me a dead man walking. Well, now you're going to see what a dead man can do. Then I walked. Not because I was done, but because the next part didn't belong on a doorstep. The next part would burn through every lie he ever told. And I was just getting started. The house felt smaller now. Or maybe I'd just outgrown the silence I used to live in. I sat at the kitchen table, files and receipts spread like a battlefield across the scarred wood, while the morning sun filtered in through the blinds, drawing bars across the floor. It reminded me of prison light. Cold. Confining. It had been 3 days since the confrontation. 3 days of no calls, no apologies, no knock at the door. I didn't expect one. Jerry had made his stance clear. And me? I was finally done begging for scraps of respect. I kept going over the evidence, dates, transfers, overdraft fees. My bank statements told a story I hadn't wanted to read. Slow financial death by the hands of someone I loved. Over time, he'd siphon me dry. It wasn't all at once, and that was the cruelest part. It was sneaky, disguised as, just for a few weeks, pops, or, I'll pay you back Friday, I swear. He'd weaponized my loyalty, used my love like a crowbar to pry my wallet open. A soft knock on the door startled me. For a second, my heart leapt. Maybe he came to talk. Maybe this was the beginning of something real. But it wasn't Jerry. It was Lorna, from Dialysis. She held up a brown paper bag. I brought you some hot soup and that banana bread you like. I gestured her inside, embarrassed by the mess on the table. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she cut in gently, placing the food on the counter. You looked hollow the other day. I don't like seeing good men eat alone when they've got a fire burning in their gut. I gave a weak smile. I've got more than fire in there now. I've got proof. She glanced at the papers. Going after him legally? I nodded. Bank fraud. Elder abuse. Maybe even identity theft, depending on what I find. She took a seat across from me, folding her hands. You know this isn't just about money, right? I know. You're fighting for the version of him you thought you raised. You're still grieving the man he was supposed to be. That hit like a slap. I looked away, throat tight. What if I never raised that version to begin with? She shook her head. Don't do that. Don't carry his choices like they're your failures. We sat in silence for a while. She ate banana bread. I drank soup that tasted more like comfort than food. And then she said something I hadn't expected. You should tell your story. I laughed. What, like post it online? A pity parade? No, she said firmly. Like a warning. A statement. You're not alone, and people need to hear what family betrayal looks like. Maybe it'll save someone else. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, thinking about what Lorna said. Maybe she was right. Maybe silence helped Jerry get away with it. Maybe if I spoke, really spoke, I could shift the shame from me to where it belonged. So the next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened Facebook. I typed out the story, not the whole thing, but enough. I talked about the betrayal, the ATM, the voice in the background saying, let him die. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. Within hours, it spread. People I hadn't heard from in years sent messages of support. Some shared their own stories. Others offered help. But more than that, I saw comments from people who knew Jerry, co-workers, former classmates, church folk. They weren't angry. They were disappointed. And that hurts a man worse than fury. By nightfall, Tanya's social media had gone private. Jerry hadn't posted, but I knew he saw it. My cousin Janine sent me screenshots from a group chat where Tanya ranted about me, ruining their life with boomer drama. I didn't even flinch. Let them squirm. I wasn't done. I filed the fraud claim at the bank the next day. The manager, a kind man named Davis, took one look at the paperwork and said, "This is solid. We'll get investigators involved." A report went to Adult Protective Services. It felt surreal, being labeled a victim of elder abuse. But if the shoe fits, I wore it. I kept moving. I changed my passwords, closed old accounts, rewrote my will, and I left Jerry out of it. Entirely. No note. No explanation. Just gone. If Tanya thought I was a dead man walking, she was right. But she didn't realize the dead don't carry guilt. We let the living bury themselves. And Jerry was already waist-deep. They say when you play with fire, you should expect to get burned. But nobody talks about the burn that comes from holding the match too long, hoping the person you're trying to warm won't turn on you. That's what loving Jerry had become, years of clutching heat until it blistered. And now that I'd finally let go, the fire didn't just flicker out. It roared. The Facebook post kept spreading. The shares doubled, then tripled. Messages poured in, some from strangers who saw the story through friends of friends, others from folks in my neighborhood or from our church. I didn't even know half of them were still paying attention to my life. But the post struck a nerve. Older folks told me about their own children who bled them dry. Younger people messaged me with apologies on behalf of their generation. A retired lawyer even offered to help with paperwork pro bono. Still, the silence from Jerry was louder than all of it. Not a call, not a text, not a word. But the consequences came knocking. 2 weeks after the post, I got a call from my cousin Janine again. "Turn on the news," she said, almost giddy. Channel 5. Local segment. The headline read, "City Accountant Under Scrutiny After Elder Financial Abuse Allegation Goes Viral." Jerry's smug face was plastered next to the anchor's shoulder. The reporter explained how community outrage had prompted a review of his professional conduct. That his employer, a mid-sized accounting firm, was investigating whether he had used his position or skills to defraud a family member. HR was quoted. "Pending outcome, administrative leave has been issued." I didn't celebrate. Not yet. But I sat back and exhaled like I hadn't in months. Later that evening, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Jerry. He looked thinner, pale, eyes tired, dressed in wrinkled slacks and a windbreaker like he'd walked straight from work, or wherever they told him not to come back to. I opened the door. Didn't invite him in. He stared at me a long time. "You ruined me, Dad." "No, son," I said calmly. "You did that all on your own. I just stopped protecting you from the truth." His voice cracked. "I lost my job. Tanya's freaking out. Our wedding. Everything's falling apart." I didn't flinch. "You wanted to act like I was already dead. Now you get to live with the hole you dug." He looked around the porch like he might break something. Then his eyes met mine again, pleading this time. "Just delete the post. Please. I'm sorry, all right. I messed up. But you airing this out for the world to see. How could you do that to your own blood?" That word. Blood. Like it was supposed to bind me to my suffering. "I was bleeding, Jerry," I said. "And you were the one with the knife." He opened his mouth. Closed it. Swallowed hard. "I'm not deleting anything," I added. "The only thing I'll take down is my guilt for letting you treat me like this for so long." "I didn't mean for it to get that bad," he said softly. "But it did," I snapped. "Because you never stopped to ask how I was managing. You just took. Over and over. And when I had nothing left, you laughed. Or stood by while someone else did." Tears welled in his eyes, but I didn't trust them. I'd seen that trick too many times. He stepped back. "So that's it. You just want me to suffer?" "No," I said. "I want you to grow up. Suffering's your choice." He turned and walked down the porch steps slowly, like he was waiting for me to stop him. I didn't. 2 days later, Tanya posted a rant online, some desperate screed about cancel culture and toxic parents and how they didn't deserve this. She said I was bitter and manipulative, claimed I'd lied, that Jerry had supported me for years, and I was senile and confused. But people weren't buying it. There were too many receipts, too many digital footprints, too many people who'd seen the way I walked through the world, quiet, humble, giving. And now finally, angry. The fallout didn't just hit them. It rippled out. Their wedding venue pulled out. Tanya's job, a PR firm, let her go. Apparently, her public tantrum didn't play well with clients. A few of Jerry's friends reached out to me directly, saying they were sorry, that they'd seen signs, that they should have said something sooner. And somewhere in the storm, I realized something. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. Burning things down wasn't about destruction. It was about light. I was shining a spotlight on rot that had lived too long in shadows. And as painful as it was to watch the fallout unfold, it felt like breathing again. Like the smoke finally clearing after years of suffocating silence. Morris, from Dialysis, brought me a slice of peach cobbler the next week. He chuckled as he sat beside me in the waiting room. You really lit the whole damn matchbox, huh? I smiled. Just tired of the cold. He leaned in. You think he'll come around? I don't know, I said honestly. But if he does, he better come correct. Because I wasn't the same man he abandoned. I was someone else now. And I liked this version of me just fine. Some mornings I still woke up expecting a knock. Not the kind from a neighbor or delivery man, but the weightier knock of regret, of second thoughts, of some last-ditch plea from Jerry. But the door stayed quiet. The house still. And the silence no longer felt lonely. It felt earned. I'd build it back brick by brick. And though the air inside carried the dust of past betrayals, it also held peace. Peace I hadn't felt in years. Fall gave way to winter. The cold settled in my joints, but I moved slower with intention now, not defeat. Dialysis remained a routine, but I no longer dragged my feet there. I walked with the steadiness of a man who had finally set something down, the unbearable weight of undeserved guilt. And that kind of release changes you. It changes your spine, your breath, your stare. One day, while Morris and I sat quietly hooked up, he nudged me and said, "You should write a book." I chuckled. About what? Dying broke and disappointed? No, he said with a grin. About what not to forgive. It stuck with me. Not because I thought of myself as wise or interesting, but because I'd learned something most people don't until it's too late. Forgiveness isn't free. It costs your boundaries, your sleep, sometimes your dignity. And if you're not careful, you'll keep forgiving people who are only sorry they got caught. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a card. No fancy design, just plain white with gold trim. Inside, Jerry's handwriting. I messed up. I know that now. I can't fix what I did, but I'm sorry. I don't know what you want from me, or if you ever want to talk again. But I'll be here if you do. Jerry. No plea. No excuses. Just those words. It sat on my table for 3 days. I read it every night like it was scripture, trying to decide what to feel. Part of me softened. Another part grew colder. Was that what remorse looked like? Or was it just the first tremor of desperation now that he'd watched his world collapse? I showed it to Lorna the next time she dropped off groceries. Well, she asked. I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything, she said. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconnection. You can release him without inviting him back in. I sat with that. That night, I wrote a letter of my own. Jerry, I received your card. I believe you're sorry. But belief doesn't change the past. It doesn't refill my bank account or erase the years I spent defending you while you quietly undermined me. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you either. I'm not interested in rebuilding what we had. What we had wasn't real. It was built on a version of you I wanted to see, and on a version of me you could exploit. I'm not that man anymore. I wish you healing, but I'll be doing mine at a distance. Your father. I didn't mail it. I didn't need to. Some things are written for the soul, not the mailbox. The weeks rolled on. Jerry didn't reach out again. Tanya's name vanished from public view. People eventually moved on from the drama, as they always do, but a few neighbors now waved longer. A few more stopped to ask how I was doing. One elderly woman even said, "Your story helped me tell my daughter no for the first time in 10 years. Maybe I didn't save Jerry, but maybe I saved someone else." I started attending a support group, retired folks dealing with family estrangement. We met every other Thursday in the back room of a library. The chairs squeaked and the coffee was weak, but the voices were strong. One woman named Phyllis spoke about her son draining her IRA. A man named Rick hadn't heard from his kids in 3 years. And yet, we all sat together, shoulder to shoulder, reclaiming space we'd once given away too freely. I told my story too. They nodded. One woman even cried. And I realized, for the first time in a long while, that I was not alone. Boundaries saved my life. Not the kind drawn in sand, but the kind carved in stone, with trembling hands and a voice finally willing to be heard. Because sometimes, love has to stop to be real. It has to be challenged, tested, proven. And when it fails that test, the strongest thing you can do isn't forgive blindly. It's to walk away with your head high. On New Year's Eve, I lit a candle. Just one. I didn't pray. I didn't wish. I just watched the flame. Steady. Quiet. Alive. I whispered to no one in particular. I'm still here. That was enough. And if Jerry ever truly wanted to find me again, not for money, not for convenience, but for truth, he'd know where to start. But he'd have to walk a long road. Alone. If you've made it this far, maybe you've lived something like this too. Maybe your love for someone made you blind until it broke you. Maybe you've been told to forgive because it's what good people do. But let me tell you, good people deserve peace too. And sometimes, peace means choosing yourself. So if this story moved you, share it. Comment below. Let someone else know it's okay to say, enough. Because sometimes the strongest love is the one that finally lets go.